Millionaire Bill Maher is annoyed that Americans are complaining about the economic instability that they're experiencing in their lives. It could be jobs that aren't paying them high enough wages to make ends meet. It could be the fact that inflation is still a problem, especially when they're buying groceries. But Maher thinks that Americans are actually just ungrateful and that the problem is that we can't see how good we have it. So let's get into the details. Maher asked the following on last Friday's installment of Real Time with Bill Maher. Why are Biden's approval ratings so low when things are generally pretty good? Maher said that while the country does have its problems, he conceded to that. He also pointed to wages that have been rising. I mean, not enough to keep up with inflation, but let's put that aside. Low unemployment, which doesn't take into account the quality of jobs, whether they pay Americans enough to make ends meet, or doesn't even take into account the number of people who aren't looking for jobs because they've given up. And then of course, he talks about the roaring stock market, which most Americans actually do not benefit from. It's actually a small percentage of high earners who get to take advantage of a well-performing stock market. But I'll give him that because people are invested, their 401ks, their retirements, invested in the stock market. So if it's performing well, that is good news. Maher then went on to list off a bunch of other things that we should be grateful for. Cheap TVs, next day shipping, stuffed crust pizza, which I personally find disgusting, legal weed, which I do not find disgusting and I do appreciate, although the taxes for the legal weed in California too high, let's get it lower. GPS and porn on your phone, which I don't really have much interest in.
Yeah.
But Cenk, I don't know, does Bill Maher have a point? I mean, shouldn't we just be happy with our internet porn and our stuffed crust pizza?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so I'm more mixed on this than you are. So on the one hand, Anna's right. This is classic bubble thinking. In his bubble, everything's great. He's probably has a lot of money in the stock market. Stock market's up. His wages are up. He just signed a new 2-year deal with HBO, and probably everyone he knows is thrilled. And and I know folks like this. They're genuinely puzzled why anyone in the country is angry because they cannot see outside of their own bubble. They just are incapable of it. 40% of the country would be financially ruined by a $400 bill. An extra $400 bill, 40% of the country. But they never, ever have interaction with those people. So Anna's 100% right about that. On the other hand, I like everything he listed. and I think that he talked about we're over medicated, I agree. We're not appreciative enough, and I kind of agree. So we have amazing things that's available to us now, and we're constantly grumpy. It reminded me of the old Louis C.K. pre-canceled bit that he did on one of the late night shows where he talked about, he's on a plane and we're on this amazing birds like thousands of feet above the air, right? And because we don't get internet within 5 seconds, we're angry, right? The access to all the world's information, etc. So I did have a soft spot in my heart for that portion of his rant.
Listen. The way that I see it is every year our quality of life declines consistently, year after year. Something changes, right? In LA, what we're gonna look forward to is the passage of HLA, where a notoriously traffic congested city is now going to do away with lanes on roads and make them dedicated bike lanes and bus lanes.
It's really insane.
It is going to double my already hour-long to hour-and-a-half long commute. Okay, I want to hang myself.
Don't.
No, but guys, okay, but that's what the voters in LA did because they don't know what they're getting themselves into. They're about to find out. So enjoy, Angelenos. I hope you love it, okay? And for all of you guys who get to work from home, if you voted in favor of it, you, okay? So let me put that aside.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Okay, but no, but that's, look. Every year, you just feel like you're being crushed, right? Like the pressure is real, Cenk. The economic pressure is real. Oh, you're gonna talk about rising wages? Okay, that's fair, that's true. There was a tight labor market where for the first time in a long time, workers had a little bit of leverage to get higher wages. At the same time, we see what's happening with inflation, And as much as the Biden administration wants to convince us that inflation isn't a problem anymore, inflation slowed down. Sure, but the benchmark prices for things that we need to survive, like groceries, remain high and continue to go up. It's just that the prices aren't going up as rapidly as they did previously.
So both things can be true at the same time. A lot of your rant is also true. So the road diet that she's referring to,
they literally call it road diets.
That's what they call it, and so they want to make LA traffic more congested, which is mind-blowing.
Because they want to force people to take public transportation, which in LA is not doable.
Yeah.
It's just not doable. Okay.
So, look, they tried a version of this in Manhattan and everybody already hates it. And The View was grilling Governor Hochul about it the other day, et cetera. So it's just, but my point here isn't about that specific thing. Anna's not wrong that, and I often talk about this in the context of corporate rule. It's like the trash compactor in the first Star Wars. It's closing, the walls are closing in on us. And they are. Our wages over the last 50 years have stagnated. Whereas our productivity is sky high. We've talked about this a lot on TYT. So it's not they gaslight you, people on TV gaslight you and say, what, everything's totally great. When it's not true, the houses are unaffordable. Student debt is much higher. There's, you're attached to your employer and beholden to them because God forbid you leave your employer, then you don't have health insurance anymore. You might literally die, right? So there's been more and more rules put in place that have given giant corporations huge advantage over us, and they're using it to squeeze not just profits out of us, but they're getting us to a place where we're barely able to survive while working for them, okay? But at the same time, we have made great advances over the last 200 years. So life expectancy is, I forget if it's doubled or tripled. We did a story on that a while back.
Yay, we get to live longer while we're miserable.
No, but you have the advent of science and technology and medicine. Look, I'll use my case, and I've said this before too. If I was born 40, 50 years before I was, or maybe even 30 or 20 years before I was, I probably would have died of the very extreme skin condition that I had. But medicine and science saved my life, right? So there are amazing things that are happening, including stuffed crust pizza. Let's be fair, okay?
Listen, if you love it, great, enjoy it. But I don't want to hear anyone tell me you should be happy and you should, in Bill Maher's words, cheer the fuck up because we have big screen TVs and stuffed crust pizza. Okay, no, I want peace of mind, okay, for the first time in my life. Not having to worry about, the possibility of getting laid off, by the way, when as a woman in your 50s. Like, I think about that all the time. What happens as a woman in your 50s in a country that has serious problems with age discrimination? Okay, people are always concerned about their economic and financial health and stability. And someone like Bill Maher is unable to comprehend it because he doesn't know what that's like.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So to tell people to cheer the F up when they don't have a black car service picking them up to take them to work every day. They don't have the luxurious lifestyle that Bill Maher gets to take advantage of. Most Americans have to grind every single day just to make ends meet. And even if they work really, really hard, there's absolutely no guarantee that they'll have the financial stability they need to own a home, to have a family, to even get married, which is why you're seeing people get married or have kids later and later in life. The economic instability is a huge part of that. But he says, let's go to graphic 4, stop acting like life in America in 2024 is unbearable. Biden's ratings are in the toilet, not because he's doing such a bad job, but because a lot of Americans like to live with their head in the toilet. Well, why don't you tell that to the homeless people in Chicago, okay, who couldn't get any space in any of the shelters in Chicago because of the migrant crisis that Biden basically neglected until it became a political liability. By the way, big story out of Chicago today, they're now evicting the migrants from those shelters to make space for homeless Americans, which is also a terrible solution because I don't want to see migrants living on the streets either. But these are real issues that real people are dealing with, and some HBO talk show host who's like raking in the big bucks for his subpar show with his subpar conversations wouldn't understand that.
I think you're being unfair, Anna. He did not get into his own agency's fancy Oscar party. And so he left his agency over that.
What a little
and
bitch.
You see the tragedies in his life? I mean, all the other giant celebrities were at the house, the estate of the head of CAA, his agency.
I would give CAA a higher percentage of my earnings if they didn't invite me to that shindig, okay?
Okay, well, obviously he doesn't agree. But kidding aside, guys, that comment about Biden is so bubble thinking, because for rich folks in this country, they genuinely don't get it. They're like, our lives are already great, and Biden made it slightly better. There's the semiconductor bill, the infrastructure bill. My company got something out of the the COVID relief bill or the other bill, etc. He made it slightly better. I don't get it, and they genuinely don't, because they don't know people, the great majority of Americans, who didn't get something out of the semiconductor bill, and whose company wasn't greatly benefited, and who hasn't enjoyed the spoils that they're talking about. So the rest of America thinks that the Bill Maher's of the world are nuts. They're like, what great things are talking, and now I have to vote for Biden because he gave me 15% change when I needed 150% change? So, okay, that's the disconnect. But lastly, on the, he did a long rant about the pills and the antidepressants and all that.
Self-medicating and all that.
Self-medicating, and I gotta say, I do kind of agree with him on that. Everything is pathologized now, and you have to take this pill for that, but then the other pill for the third thing, and the 18th pill for the something. Guys, appreciate appreciate what we have. I'm not saying we have the world's greatest things, etc., but we do have some things that we can appreciate. So separate the political conversation from the personal conversation. Politically, our leaders have to do a lot better. It's not even close. On a personal level, though, soak in the positive parts of life, and we're way over reliant on drugs to make us happy. Okay,
I refuse. I will not allow it, and I will end on this. Let's go to graphic 8. So Bill Maher also said this: the people who really shouldn't be that bummed out but are acting like it anyways are exactly who you think, white women. An estimated 35% of whom are on antidepressants, although in their defense, have you seen the prices at Lululemon? Okay, so look, I mostly want to make a comment about the brazen sexism and misogyny, mostly demonstrated by Democrats and left-leaning men, okay? Just because you put white before women doesn't mean that your misogyny doesn't exist. It's still misogynistic, it's still sexist. Like, I love this new trend of like, I'm a good liberal Democrat and I want to engage in misogyny, so I'm just gonna put white before women and it's gonna be totally fine. No, we see through that crap, okay?
Yeah.
You're sexist, you're misogynist, and you're boring and smug as f. Okay, Bill Maher, suck it.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.